Some decisions leave you feeling calm. Others leave you feeling unsure. Not because the choice was wrong necessarily, but because of how it was made. Graceful decision making isn't about choosing better options. It's about learning how to decide in a way where you're calm inside the choice, not just satisfied with the result. Welcome back to Gracefully Lori. I'm Lori. If you're new here, this channel is for women who want to live authentically, express themselves with intention, and move through the world with quiet, modern grace. This is the fourth video in a short series where I explore what graceful living actually looks like in everyday life. And today, we're talking about decisions. Element 1. Before we talk about big decisions, it's worth talking about those smaller, everyday choices. Many women don't feel unsettled because of the decisions they make. They feel unsettled because of the way the decisions are handled. There's a subtle difference between making choices as they arise and living in a constant state of deciding. Graceful decision-making begins with learning when a decision actually deserves your attention and when it doesn't. If everything earns your attention, it may show up as a sense of internal rush, letting choices linger unnecessarily, revisiting things that don't need revisiting, feeling slightly on edge without knowing why. Nothing dramatic is happening. Life may look perfectly fine from the outside, but internally, there's tension or strain. In contrast, when decisions are handled gracefully, there's room to breathe. Not because life is simpler, but because attention is better placed. Let's talk about 3 types of decisions you may make every day. Small, everyday decisions. Graceful women don't linger over them. They choose, they move on. They don't mentally return to the choice. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond. The decision is complete, and so is the feeling. Things that don't need an answer yet. Some choices benefit from space, an invitation that doesn't require an immediate response, a plan that will clarify itself over time, an idea that can remain open without consequence. Graceful decision-making allows these to stay open without creating an internal tension. In other words, you are giving yourself the space to defer those decisions and to be okay with it. Decisions that matter more. When something does matter, graceful women allow it to unfold at an appropriate pace, without rushing themselves and without misconstruing patience as uncertainty. When decisions are handled this way, something subtle but important changes. You don't feel rushed inside your own life. You don't feel mentally crowded. And you don't feel pressure to resolve everything the moment it appears. That feeling has a name. It's discernment. Discernment is knowing what choices deserve your attention, which ones can be decided quickly and released, and which ones are better given space. It's not indecision, and it's not avoidance. It's the ability to place decisions in their proper proportion so your energy isn't spent carrying choices that don't require it. This is the first element of graceful decision-making. Grace begins when decisions are handled with intention and timing, not urgency. But not all decisions are neutral. Some carry real emotional weight, and those require a different kind of care entirely. That's where the second element comes in. Some decisions don't just ask for time. They ask for steadiness. These are the decisions that carry weight. Career changes, relationship choices, moves, commitments that shape your life in visible ways. And when decisions matter, emotion naturally shows up. The challenge isn't feeling emotion. It's deciding while emotion is still in the driver's seat. Graceful decision-making looks different here. You can usually feel when emotion has taken over a decision. It shows up as urgency to decide just so the discomfort will stop, pressure to choose quickly to feel relief, guilt or fear quietly steering the choice, a sense that you're being pushed rather than choosing. Nothing is wrong. Emotion is doing what emotion does, but decisions made in that state often feel unsteady afterward, not because they're wrong, but because they were made to escape a feeling rather than from a calm place within it. Graceful decisions ask for something else. Let's look at this with real-life examples. Career decisions. Instead of deciding in the middle of burnout or frustration, graceful women allow space for emotion to settle before asking what they really want to change. They don't confuse exhaustion with clarity. Relationship decisions. Instead of deciding from hurt, guilt, or fear of loss, they allow time for emotions to soften, so the decision reflects truth, not reaction. Major life changes, moves, commitments, long-term choices. Graceful women don't rush these decisions just because the feeling is intense. They give themselves permission to wait until they can hear themselves think. Graceful women aren't suppressing emotion, and they aren't pretending it doesn't matter. They're simply not allowing emotion to run the decision. They recognize when feeling needs to be felt before deciding, when time is required for clarity, when urgency is emotional rather than real. They don't ask, what will make this feeling go away? They ask, what will still feel right once this feeling passes? This is emotional neutrality. Emotional neutrality doesn't mean being detached. It means being steady enough to decide without being pulled off center. It's the ability to hold emotion without letting it choose for you. This is the second element of graceful decision making. Grace shows up when decisions are made from calm consideration, not emotional momentum. But calm alone isn't enough. At some point, a decision needs direction. And that's where the third element comes in. At some point, after you've given a decision time and emotional space, logic reaches its limit. You've thought it through. You've weighed the options. Nothing is obviously wrong, but nothing is obviously right either. This is where many women stall. You feel that lost momentum when your intuition is being ignored. This may look like asking for more opinions, needing one more reason, explaining a choice you already feel clear about, waiting for certainty that never quite arrives. The decision isn't necessarily unclear. It's simply not logical enough in your head to feel justified. And so it stays open. When there's no clearly right answer, what do you do? Let's look at some examples. First, choosing between two good options. Both options make sense. Both are reasonable. Graceful women notice which option feels calmer to live with. Not more impressive, not more defensible, just steadier. Saying yes or no to something appealing. Instead of persuading themselves into or out of it, graceful women listen for ease or resistance in their body. Not excitement, not fear, ease. Making a personal choice others may question. Graceful women don't over-explain. They don't build a case. They decide and allow the decision to belong to them. In each of these cases, graceful women treat intuition as information, not impulse. They understand that intuition doesn't need to be justified, nor do they need permission to trust it. This is called intuitive guidance. Intuitive guidance is the ability to recognize when a decision feels settled inside, even if it isn't perfectly logical on paper. This is the third element of graceful decision making. Grace shows up when you trust your inner direction without turning it into something you have to defend. But even well-made decisions can feel unsettled if they're endlessly revisited afterwards. That brings us to the fourth element. Some decisions are difficult, not because of what they require, but because they're never allowed to be finished. They're replayed, reevaluated, measured again and again. Graceful decision-making doesn't work that way. You can feel when regret has entered the process. It shows up as mentally revisiting the decision, imagining alternate outcomes, questioning whether you should have known more, using hindsight to undermine yourself. Even when life is moving forward, part of you is still living backward. How does this look in real life? After a big decision, graceful women don't immediately judge the outcome. They understand that decisions may be imperfect because not all information is available up front. Time reveals things that thinking cannot. When a decision leads to mixed results, they don't label it as a mistake. They recognize it as information, not a verdict on their judgment. Graceful women allow decisions to be complete. They don't punish themselves for choosing with the information they had at the time. Growth doesn't invalidate past choices. Uncertainty doesn't mean the decision was wrong. Regret is not a requirement for wisdom. This element has a name. It's called forward integrity. Forward integrity is the ability to live fully in the life you've chosen without constantly reopening the decision that led there. This is the fourth element of graceful decision making. Grace shows up when you move forward without dragging the past behind you. But life doesn't stay still. Even good decisions sometimes need to change. That's where the final element comes in. Some women stay in decisions longer than they should, not because the decision is right, but because changing it feels like failure. Sometimes change gets moralized. You can feel it when adjustment feels self-judged. The decision becomes a test instead of a living choice. So let's look at ways decisions may change in real life. Refining a commitment. Graceful women adjust scope, timing, or direction without dramatizing the change. Changing course. They don't announce it as a reversal. They simply respond to new information, letting something go. They don't frame it as quitting. They recognize that responsiveness is not instability. Graceful women understand that decisions are made within a context. Growth changes perspective. Refinement is part of living well. You don't attach shame to adjustment. You don't need to justify evolution. This is called self-trust in motion. Self-trust in motion is the ability to adapt without losing dignity. This is the fifth element of graceful decision making. Grace shows up when you allow life to evolve without turning that evolution against yourself. Graceful decision making isn't about perfection. It's about how decisions are handled from beginning to middle to what comes next. When choices are made with discernment, emotional neutrality, intuitive guidance, forward integrity, and self-trust in motion, decisions stop feeling heavy. They feel intentional. They feel calm. They feel elegant to live with, not because they're flawless, but because they were made with care. That is what makes a decision graceful. So, of the 5 elements we talked about today, which one feels most present in your life right now? Please tell me below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this video resonated, I hope you'll consider liking it so the video can spread to others who may want to better understand graceful decision making. And if you've been enjoying this series on what graceful living actually looks like in everyday life, I'd love for you to subscribe and continue the conversation with me. We'll keep exploring grace, not as an idea, but as a way of moving through life. So, until next time, my graceful friends.